The Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Podcast Network and on Patriots Press Pass. I'm Evan Lazar, joined as always by Alex Barth. And at around 7:30 a.m. this morning, we all got some news that I don't think I was expecting. I don't think any of us were expecting that Bill Belichick, Mr. No Days Off himself, canceled the final day of Patriots minicamp practice. The players were at the facility, but no practice on Thursday. Really bad rains this morning in the Foxborough area, probably a contributing factor there. There were also a lot of them, Bill Belichick included, with you at the Celtics game last night, Alex. So maybe that was a contributing factor as well, but no mini camp today. So we had a 2-day Patriots mini camp, and that's it. That's all she wrote. All the OTAs also canceled for the rest of the spring. So we'll see in training camp. And I don't want to make a huge deal out of them canceling the OTA practices, because that's pretty standard. You and I had talked a little bit off the air about whether or not they were going to hold those two practices quite a bit. So I'm not shocked at all by them canceling Monday and Tuesday's practice sessions. I assume that they felt like they could get some things done in the building today, whether it was walkthroughs or film study or whatever the case may be, that they didn't have to get out there on the practice field necessarily. But still a little bit of a surprise to wake up to that news this morning that practice had been canceled.
Yeah, and look, they're not the only team that did it. You know, quick research earlier, I didn't dive through all 32 teams, but I know the Steelers, Giants, and Niners also canceled not just OTA but minicamp practices. So those two, I just did a podcast right before this with our old friend Trags, and he was asking me about it. And, you know, they canceled them. What does it matter anyway? They're spring practices. The first couple OTAs, and we talked about it on the show, were kind of BS, right? I got to make sure I don't swear. You know, we're just some unclassy Bostonians here.
There'll be some kids around, Alex.
Right. You know, I got to watch my language. I don't want to be considered not classy. We're just a couple of Boston scumbags. Those practices were kind of BS, those OTA practices. Those two minicamp practices, though, were – look, there weren't pads, right? They weren't in pads or anything like that. But for a spring practice – that's as full go as I've ever seen them. I really felt like there was some stuff there, and we talked about it on Tuesday, and we'll talk about it more coming up here, but it really felt like we learned a little bit. It really felt like there was something you could sink your teeth into, really take away. So, you know, if it's 2 practices at 70% or 3 practices at 40%, I almost feel like the 2 at 70 are better, right? I don't know if what's 4 times 3 is 120. Yeah. So, and 2 at 70 would be 140. So the math even checks out. I thought those were 2 really good practices, and if players earn the day off, I'll give it to them. The players earn the day off.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've heard some rumors. You mentioned about San Francisco, I believe, was one of those teams that canceled a minicamp practice as well, or their final minicamp practice. In Chicago, they actually were stripped an OTA.
Yeah, that's different.
For it being too intense, which I thought was interesting. But what we heard from Devin McCourty this morning about really going back and forth, right? Really having the offense make a good play, the defense make a good play. And his point was that good teams have the ability for both sides of the football to kind of throw haymakers. And I thought we saw some of those haymakers, maybe more so a little bit towards the offense. I thought the offense held a little bit of an upper hand in the 2 days of minicamp that we saw. But all in all, an intense couple of days down at Gillette, and certainly in early summer is nothing to be concerned about. I think we can agree on that there's no cause for alarm because Bill Belichick decided that enough was enough with the spring program. But I want to get into some of the details of what we saw yesterday. We were on the show on Tuesday, so we recapped some of the things that happened on day 1. But day 2 and then just the 2 days as a whole, I think if there's one overarching positive theme that I keep coming back to through all the discourse, through all the detail, it's that Mac Jones had 2 really strong days of practice. And I want to be careful to not get into too much hyperbole over minicamp practices in June.
I'm sorry, you called it the best practice he ever had on Tuesday. I think the ship has sailed on that one.
I thought Tuesday was one of the best practices I've ever seen him have in a Patriots uniform, certainly.
One of you said the best. You said I'm just trying to keep you honest here. All right, I'm not picking on you. I just for the people.
the best practice on Tuesday. But I think what stood out among all of it is, and the reason why I was so bullish on his practice on Tuesday is we are seeing a Mac Jones that is legitimately confident in his arm to push the football down the field. And granted, it isn't these 11 on 11s with barely a pass rush and 7 on 7s with literally no pass rush, right? So we'll have to see if it translates to a live rush. But his willingness to see one-on-one matchups on the outside and go ahead and push and attack the football down the field with those one-on-one matchups and be able to put the ball in some really good places for his receivers. I think it's really easy to see that Mac Jones's deep ball has improved. How much has it improved? That we'll have to see, right? Once we get into November, December, January, especially when the weather starts to get a little bit nasty, we'll see how much that velocity and deep ball has really improved. But based off the eye test of what we saw for 2 days, I had him down for 8 of 10 on 20 plus yard throws in the 2 minicamp practices. He was on fire throwing the football down the field. We can obviously get into some of the guys that caught those passes as well, but if you're a Patriots fan and you're looking for something to hang your hat on about this team moving forward, the quarterback, I think, is the biggest thing that you can really be excited about.
Yeah, and even with the no pads, tight window's a tight window, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much you're hitting or not. And he was really testing some windows, both in terms of coverage. The coverage window is the one everybody thinks of, right? Where how close is the defense back to the receiver? And he had the one throw yesterday to Trey Nixon. It was also a great catch, but they sent Trey Nixon straight up the seam out of the slot. He's one-on-one with Jonathan Jones. I wouldn't say separated. He got half a step ahead of him. And Mac just put it over the top. And with John Jones on him, Trey Nixon one hand, I mean, it was right there.
Yeah.
But some other, what I would call window throws too, like fades and high points, right? Where the window's not necessarily the space between the receiver and the defender, but where you're kind of testing the wide receiver's catch radius, right? How big is the window where you can throw this ball away from the receiver that he can still go and make the play? And I thought he had a really nice high point throw to Devontae Parker on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He had another really nice high point throw to Jonnu Smith on Wednesday, where, I mean, he's just kind of lofting the ball up, and he knows the defensive back can't get there. It's either incomplete or the receiver's going to get it. And he kind of found that sweet spot the receivers could get to the ball. That's the big one for me. That was a throw. The ones where it's like close defensive coverage and you're just trying to lead the receiver a little bit. He made a lot of those throws at Alabama. The catch radius throws, I mean, the guys could separate enough that he didn't have to do that a ton. I'm not saying he couldn't do it. There weren't a ton of examples of it in college. And so to see him come out, make a couple of those throws early on, that feels like a growth thing. And that is, and I wrote this and we talked about this. Somebody asked us a couple of weeks ago, what are we looking to see, most improved for Mac Jones? And I said confidence. Not that he wasn't confident before, but I think any guy from year 1 to year 2, there's a certain comfort level. And between some of the throws he was testing, and I would add the way he's reacting to those throws, sprinting up the field, chest bumping with the wide receivers, all of that.
Actually, Trey Nixon,
I think, I forget if I said this last Thursday, or if I said it on Tuesday, he feels like he's been here a while. It doesn't feel like he's only been here a year. Just his rapport with the receivers, both in terms of the route running chemistry and what they're doing in between the snaps. It feels like they've been together for 3, 4, 5 years, not just, really less than one. Cam was still the QB1 at this time last year. So that's the biggest encouraging thing to me. It's just the across the board confidence improvement has been excellent.
Yeah. When you watch his tape at Alabama, which his last season there at Alabama when they won the national title, that's confidence on another level, right? That's Heisman Trophy level, national championship level stuff. One of the things that you consistently saw with Mac on tape, and I think that a lot of the draft discourse labeled his arm weak and that he wasn't really somebody that pushed the football down the field. He pushed the football down the field plenty at Alabama, and he just gave his guys chances, right? He put the ball in good places. He knew that. He trusted guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and John Mechie to go up and get the football. And there was that confidence of attacking one-on-ones, right? He'd find the one-on-one and he'd put it on a dime and he'd let his receiver go ahead and make a play. And that's what we consistently saw out of him in these 2 practices. So in a lot of ways, I thought last year he was conservative, and I think rightfully so. As a rookie quarterback, you're just trying not to sink the ship, right? You're
Right.
trying not to have that fatal turnover. You're trying not to have that multi-turnover game that loses your team a football game. And you're just trying to let the ship sail. Now he's got to be the driver, right? And I think what we saw in these practices is a confidence and a bravado that he can go ahead and make some of these throws down the field and push the football into some tight windows. And that was great to see. That's exactly what you wanted to see out of Mac Jones. You mentioned the throw to Johnny Smith, which was one of Johnny Smith's better catches I've seen in a practice out of him as well. Up over Kyle Duggar, kind of goes across the field, and Mac just throws it up to him, and Johnny Smith goes up above Kyle Duggar and puts him on a poster. Those types of plays, there's instances on tape where those one-on-ones or those opportunities to make that type of throw were on the tape last year, but he wasn't pulling the trigger because I think he was just trying to make the safe play, right? He was trying to make the sound play. Well, in the National Football League, in order to really get that explosive passing game out of this offense, you got to take some chances with the football, right? You're talking about smart chances, though, right? We're not looking for him to throw 25 picks, but you have to take some calculated chances with the football, and I think we're seeing him have that confidence to do that more and more, whether it was to Jonnu, he threw the one on the sideline, and Nelson Aguilar with Jack Jones in coverage. Obviously, Trey Nixon caught 3 of those deep balls. You mentioned Devontae Parker on Tuesday. He caught one over Jalen Mills. Those types of passes take confidence. They take confidence and trust in the receiver also to go ahead and make the play. I was really intrigued by what I saw with the offense, and we're going to get into some of the other pieces of the offense here too in a second. But I just want to also hit on as an overarching theme here, Alex, I think there's so much concern about the coaching staff, right? And what Matt Patricia and Joe Judge are doing and all these things. But honestly, I came away from these 2 days feeling pretty good about the offense. And granted, these are passing camps and maybe they're a little bit skewed towards the offense performing well and things like that. But I still came away from these 2 days and I said, okay, I see it with Mac. I think that they actually have some receivers now that can threaten defenses and be a problem and be matchup issues. And I almost also see it with the scheme too. Like I think the streamlining, I think some of the zone stuff that they were starting to incorporate more of. I kind of like what I'm seeing from the offense. Like I know that that's like a hot take because it's supposed to be a disaster and the whole building's supposed to be on fire because Matt Patricia and Joe Judge are running the offense. But I see a path, like I see a plan here to have a pretty good offense. Honestly, if I have concerns, it's probably on the other side of the football, which we'll also get to in a few minutes. But where's your overall confidence level after 2 days of practice with the offense and what you saw out there?
I like the receiver group. I don't know that I feel differently. I think I feel more confident in the belief I had going in that the receiver room is not the issue some people think it is. They don't have the true number one, but I think they're so deep that could play to their advantage.
Yeah.
My bigger concern is up front, and we can't answer that. Like, we can't answer that. They haven't been in pads, but what's Isaiah Wynn really going to look like at right tackle? Is Trent Brown going to laugh at left tackle? You know, Cole Strange, still love him getting in scrums, love him setting the tone. I think that kind of makes him a great fit, but he's still a relative unknown. So the biggest issues for me are and this isn't to say it's going to be a problem. I'm just saying I don't know. Yeah. You know, we kind of came into this offseason thinking that the skill positions would be the big question mark. I feel really good about the skill positions right now. To me, the offensive line is a bigger question mark than the skill positions and the scheme thing. I'm still not in love with the Shanahan offense, especially if, like I just said, you have all this depth. Shanahan offense doesn't facilitate taking advantage of that the way the Earhart Perkins does. So those are where my questions are right now. In terms of skill position players, I feel pretty good. Oh, and by the way, Kevin Harris looks like a player. I know I was all in on Pierre Strong early on.
I like both of them, honestly.
I like both of them too, but yeah. Kevin Harris, for how well he moves, given his size and being a guy that recently had a back injury, it stuck out. It stuck out to me. So I love where they're at with the skill position players. I really do. It's the offensive line and the scheme that are the bigger questions for me as we start turning the page towards training camp.
Yeah, I was listening to a clip of Mike Lombardi's podcast, and he was talking about the play caller thing, and we've talked about the play caller in every single direction, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But what he said, what Lombardi said, which I thought was really head on, was when you're the offensive line coach during games, you got a lot of adjustments and things that you have to do. I mean, how many times did we see Dante Scarnecchia huddle up the offensive line throughout his 20 plus years with the Patriots? I mean, more than that, but our 20 plus years
Right.
watching Dante Scarnecchia, how many times did we see him on the sideline? How many times did we see Cole Popovich or Carm Brasillo on the sideline in recent years? It's a lot of responsibility. Now, maybe they're going to hand some of the game day adjustments and coaching off to Billy Yates and allow Matt Patricia to open up as a play caller. But Lombardi's point was that what makes the most sense is to have Joe Judge call the plays, right? He's working with the quarterback, and he's the one that's going to have really the freedom on the sideline during games to be able to call the plays. It was Matt Patricia in 11 on 11s. It seemed like Joe Judge took over on 7 on 7, which backs up a little bit of the pass game coordinator, run game coordinator theories that have been out there. But I found it interesting that Lombardi saw that as well, that Matt Patricia working with the offensive line, being the offensive line coach and calling plays, that's not usually a role that exists on many staffs. Like, offensive line coaches have their hands full. So to put that on him and call plays, it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility on one guy. So where do you stand with the play caller thing? I think at this time in June, it really, when we see them out there relaying plays into the huddle, it means next to nothing about what's actually going on during the games come September. But I thought that was an interesting perspective, that the one that makes the most sense from the traditional setup of a coaching staff would definitely be Joe Judge at this point.
Yeah, although, there's reports out there that Patricia, it's leaning towards Patricia. I find it tough to have a take on it until we know who it is, right? I think there's a lot of reasons Joe Judge makes more sense, but I'm also worried, just kind of given some of the offensive philosophy in New York the last couple of years. But I still believe them when they say they don't know who it is. I still believe it's going to be an open competition, like a position battle or whatever you want to call it. So we'll see. It's tough. It's tough to analyze without knowing who it's going to be.
Yeah, it is tough to analyze. Maybe it's Billy Yates. Like, maybe Billy Yates takes on a lot of those sideline responsibilities for the offensive line in game, and Patricia is just focused on calling plays. But if he's trying to work with the offensive line and call plays all during games, that's a lot of responsibility on one man's shoulders. Let's stick with the offensive line. We talked to Isaiah Wynn yesterday after practice. We both thought it was a little bit interesting the way that he came off in that press conference.
Yeah.
Every single time somebody asked him, I asked him a question about, was he informed about the move of moving over to right tackle before he showed up at Gillette this week? He was literally laughing at all of us. Like, I don't think he was laughing at us, but he was just kind of laughing about the situation or the questions.
It was like a frustrated laugh, like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear some of his comments. He said, oh, if they want me to play corner, I'll go play corner, right? If they want me to play, wherever they want me to play, I'll play. Said that he wasn't thinking about his contract. He did say that he was happy or satisfied with playing on the right side, like he was okay with it. But the laughing and the giggling and all that kind of stuff, I thought was a little bit weird. And the second thing I would say about Isaiah when to tee this up is I still don't really fully understand why. Like, I don't understand the why to moving him over to right tackle at this juncture after he started basically he has started every game. Actually, I went back and looked. The game that he played at left guard, I think that he came in at left guard mid-game. So I think that he's played or started every single game of his career at left tackle, maybe sans that one game at left guard. And now you're going to move him over to right tackle. It doesn't seem to add up to me. Like, why do this now? It's just a really kind of bizarre situation, if you ask me.
And I'll say it again. I'm surprised I shouldn't say I'm surprised he's okay with it. We don't know how okay with it he is. But for him in a contract year too, I mean, this is consequential. I don't know that he's going to get top 10 money when he hits free agency. But just as a point of reference here, I looked these numbers up yesterday. Actually, let me pull them up here to make sure I get them right, because I know I texted them to you right before the Celtics game. Basically, what I did is I took the average AAV for the top 10 left tackles in the top 10 right tackles in the NFL right now, right? And again, I don't know that Isaiah Wynn gets top 10 money, but just to kind of show the disparity between the two positions, Do you remember what they were? Can I make you guess again?
Yeah, so I remember what they were. Yeah.
Okay, so the top 10 left tackles average out to make $19.1 million a year. It helps that there's 3 contracts well over 20 million, but 19.1 million a year for left tackles. For right tackles, that number goes down to 13.2 million. That's a $6 million difference, and that's AAV. So let's say that's a 5-year deal. That's a $30 million difference. And I'll add too, because Isaiah Wynn's not touching, he's not going to get the top of the market unless he has an unbelievable season this year. The 10th left tackle, there's actually 2, they're tied, make 16 million a year. And one of them is a Jordan, I don't know how to pronounce it, from the Eagles, the big guy. Mailata, thank you.
Yeah.
Jordan Mailata is 25. So that's comparable for Isaiah Wynn, right? He's the 10th highest paid left tackle at 16 million. The 10th highest paid right tackle, I don't have the name off the top of my head, but it was a younger guy like Wynn as well, comes in at 7 million. So even when you get off the like he might be in the top 10 money. Since he was drafted, PFF has him as the 15th best left tackle in football. So if he has a strong year, he could sneak in that top 10. Left tackle versus right tackle, that's nearly a $10 million difference per year. So every year you're under contract, it costs you another $10 million to play on the right side instead of the left side. Maybe he's not thinking about that. Maybe his agent is. Maybe he's not thinking about that at this point. But it either tells me that they don't have a plan for him here long term. And by long term, I mean September. Or they told him, we'll give you a long-term deal, but you're going to play right tackle. And maybe we'll pay you somewhere in between left tackle and right tackle.
Yeah. I just think that in today's NFL too, you're running into a lot of teams now that have bookend edge rushers. Like, it's not like it used to be when left tackle was such a premium position. Like nowadays, right tackle also faces a lot of really good pass rushers on that side. And I'm just thinking about, they got the Buffalo Bills twice, maybe a third time if they meet again in the playoffs. Von Miller is a guy that is known to line up over the right tackle. Like, he likes being over on that side of the formation. So if you're looking for, is there a matchup reason for it? I really can't find it. Like, you're going to see, it's the NFL. You're going to see good rushers on either side. Like, it really doesn't make a difference where they try to hide you, if you want to put it that way, right? The other thing is okay, well, maybe they don't trust him next to a rookie, because last year Onwenu struggled and Wynn struggled next to each other, but now they're just flipping him over to the right side to put him next to Onwenu again. So, like, if he already struggled next to it, the one theory that I think maybe makes the most sense is spreading out some of the beef, right? Because when you put Onwenu and Trent Brown next to each other on the right side, and then you put Strange and Wynn together on the left side, that left side is really, really small, and that right side is like jumbo sized, right? So instead of putting 2 smaller athletic linemen next to each other like Strange and Wynn, maybe they're thinking about splitting those guys up so they can kind of spread out the beef across the 5 spots on the offensive line. That, I think, is maybe the best theory that I've heard so far. But in my mind, this points to, we know Trent Brown's going to be our left tackle. We know Cole Strange is going to be our left guard. We know David Andrews is going to be our center. We know Mike Onwenu is going to be our right guard. So we're going to work those guys at those 4 positions all spring and summer long. The guy that we don't know if he's going to be here or not is Isaiah Wynn. So he's going to go to the open spot, right? So continuity is always such a big thing, and they have that poster in the offensive line room, or the words above the door are "see it through the same set of eyes." Like, that's their motto in that room. Right. So keeping the other guys on the offensive line in place, knowing that that's the positions they're going to play during the season, and then maybe trading Isaiah Wynn at the end of training camp and putting Justin Herron in the starting lineup. Now you're just swapping one spot. Otherwise, Trent Brown didn't really rep there during the summer, but now all of a sudden he's got to play left tackle, and this guy's got to move over here, and that guy's got to move over there. Now you just know where the 1-for-1 is. I'm not sure if they're 100% there yet with trading Isaiah Wynn, but it feels like moving him over to right tackle and setting in stone the other 4/5 of the offensive line is almost like hedging their bet a little bit, right? Where if they feel like they do want to move on from Wynn, now you're only displacing one spot, and everybody else has been working at the spots that they're going to work at during the season.
Yeah, it almost feels like they're not moving him over there to play there. They're moving him over there to get him out of the way because Trent
Yeah.
needs the reps at left tackle because he's going to be the left tackle.
Yeah, that's definitely how it feels to me. All right. Sticking with the offense here, a couple more things on that side of the football. We got to talk about Trey Nixon. We're 25 minutes into the show. We got to talk about the hype train that is Trey Nixon.
Jerry Rice Nixon.
Yes, Alex, you like to remind me of my infatuation with Maurice Harris in the 2019 spring circuit, right? The 2019 minicamp circuit.
No, that was 18, wasn't it? I thought that was our first year.
I think it was 19.
We didn't do spring our first year. We didn't do spring in 18. We didn't start until camp. That's why. Okay.
That's correct. So 19, Maurice Harris. I loved him during spring. He obviously fizzled out, and then all of us did a look over here with Jacoby Myers, right? Like that, it ended up being Jacoby Myers. That was the guy. But where are you on the scale of, the only way I can put it, I guess, is Maurice Harris to Julian Edelman, right? Like, where are you on that scale of this being legitimate with Trey Nixon?
So let me give the background here. Maurice Harris, for people who don't remember, was this journeyman wide receiver. I think he was like 28, 29 by the time he got to New England, and he lit it up in spring practices. He did, objectively. He looked very good, and he was fast. He's a burner. That's what he was.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the pads came on and he disappeared. And I think the reason I don't bring it up to make fun of you, that's just a bonus.
Yes, you do.
No. The real reason I bring it up, and honestly, I tell people this story a lot because they ask me, like, how do you know what you're looking for, when you're out there?
Yeah.
A lot of it is, you just you kind of go off what you've seen before. Me and you had never watched a non-padded practice. So we go out there and we see him tearing it up. What are we to think? Right now we have the context of we've done this for a few years and we kind of know. So that's why I bring it up, is he looks really good right now, but we've seen guys in the past, especially guys with a similar skill sets than what he has, look good at this stage, and then the pads come on and they kind of disappear. Now, he's a little beyond Maurice Harris at this point. I mentioned the one-handed catch he made earlier. I think he's made a couple catches through contact. That's big. I think just going from last year to this year, I think his route running has improved. Last year, he was fast and he was quick. And if you don't know what the difference is, fast is speed. It's running in a straight line. Quick is like agility. It's short area. How much can you move around, get in and out of cuts, all that. He was fast and he was quick, but it didn't really look like he knew what to do with that. He had the skill set, but it was just kind of raw. It feels like he's refined that. It's coming to his route running. The other thing I'd add, somebody mentioned this in the chat, there's a real relationship between him and Mac.
Yeah.
They drove to the facility together they came in the same draft class. They drove to the facility together last year. Before Cam got cut, it was the two of them on the second team, and they had a real connection. They were tearing things up. When we look at some of these other guys, we were talking about this yesterday at practice with Jerry Thornton, who was like the best guy to talk about this with.
Yeah.
And we're bringing up, Braxton Berrios, Riley McCarron, Austin Carr. Another big difference here is, as much as Tom Brady may have liked throwing to some of those guys, Tom Brady was never putting his foot down for Austin Carr. He was never putting his foot down for Riley McCarron. Mac is in a position where he may put his, he's going to vouch a little more for Trey Nixon. He's going to get Trey Nixon more opportunity.
It reminds me a lot more of how Brady was with Edelman, right?
But Brady wasn't even that way with Edelman entirely, because remember, Edelman started as just a punt returner. It was like 4 years. He just
I just remember them having a little bit of that. I think it was a little bit of the NorCal thing too, right? Like
I know, but it was kind of it was after Edelman developed. Like, remember, they were ready to let Edelman go. He had one foot in the building in New York, right? I think, I don't know that any one of those things is, latches Trey Nixon onto the roster. Honestly, right now, I have him as one of my last guys. I was working on my roster projection before he came on. I might tweak it. Right now, I have him as one of the last guys cut, like 54, 55, 56, however you want to put it. But because I need to see it with the pads, but he's off to a good start. He's got a lot of those little things going for him. He's not just Maurice Harris showing up and running faster than everybody else, and that's the entire story. There's actual nuance to why he's having success and reasons to believe he'll continue having success. Now, the next step is Zach Sudfeld, right? He's got to prove he's not Zach Sudfeld. We'll get there in a couple of months, but I'm willing to put him ahead. I think he's passed the Maurice Harris test to this point. I'm willing to put him ahead of that.
Well, that's good to hear. I think the biggest things that stand out with Trey Nixon, the first thing is I wanted to pull up his pro day numbers because coming out of college, like this is not like a Riley McCarron athletic profile, right? Like this guy's a legitimate NFL athlete. So at his pro day out of UCF in 2021, Trey Nixon ran a 4.44 second 40-yard dash. His three cone was 6.81 seconds, and he jumped 35 and a half inches at a shade over 6 feet, 187 pounds. Like that's an NFL body type, right?
Right.
That's
He's a
NFL
great
workout
athlete.
numbers. Those are legit numbers. And you look and watch him play in these practices, he has legitimate speed. Like he's got an explosive gear. I think one of the more enticing catches too, and maybe where he's developed his game the most, because quite frankly, last year in camp, he didn't look like an NFL wide receiver. He needed to add muscle, and he just looked he looked like he was still in college, right? Like he looked like he was still a college receiver in terms of contact. But in these practices, his ability to finish through contact has really improved, and he ran a little return route over the middle of the field against Jonathan Jones and caught it in some traffic. And there's some nice anticipation there between him and Mac about where exactly he was going to be with the throw. And he's lining up in the slot. He's adding some explosive playability from that inside slot position. Alex, you've been clamoring for a long time about getting a vertical slot in this offense for
He
Mac
feels
Jones.
like he could do that. Yeah.
He feels like he can do that. And you go out there and 2 days in a row, you put Jonathan Jones, you moss him twice in two practices. Right. He's not doing this against, a seventh round corner that's not going to make the roster, or a UDFA corner that's not going to make the roster. He's doing this against the Patriots' top slot corner in John Jones. He also absolutely ran away from Shaun Wade on a crossing route, but really his route is very clear, especially to get up the field is that post corner, right? You kind of stem it inside and fake like you're going to run the post and then break it out on the corner. And Mac hit him a couple of times on that in 7-on-7 over the last couple of days. So look, we're still early. I have to learn from the Maurice Harris experiment, as you mentioned and kind of summed up perfectly, and not get way too ahead of ourselves with Trey Nixon. But early returns suggest that I think that this guy's probably going to make a strong push to make the roster. And look, I think in a lot of ways, he's the exact type of receiver that they should find a way to hang on to. Right. We kind of said the same about some of the other players along the way. Like I thought Braxton Berrios was another one of those guys that they probably should have found a way to hang on to. He was also returning punts. He didn't do that in college, but they were giving him some work there, returning punts. He's going to have to make the team on special teams also. Right. Well, that's going to be a big factor.
That to me is a big difference between him and a guy like Braxton Berrios or Christian Wilkerson last year, right? Like Christian Wilkerson, you can debate him as a receiver. He's going to contribute in kick coverage. Like he's very good at that.
Yeah.
Trey Nixon, they can get him there, but he doesn't have, like Berrios was a great punt returner. Gunner, right? Look at Gunner. He made the team on special teams. They were going to try to develop him as wide receiver, but he made the teams primarily as a special teamer.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to be the case with Trey Nixon. He's primarily a wide receiver. I think he has to play special teams to make the team, and that becomes something to watch in camp and in the preseason. Do they have him covering kicks? Do they have him returning kicks? But that's another element where it's different as well. And maybe this is where they change it up. Maybe they say, hey, we need this wide receiver depth. If he's not the best kick coverage guy in the world, so be it. He's the guy we want in that spot. Like that's it to me. It's the sixth wide receiver spot as it is right now is between him, Trey Nixon, Ty Montgomery.
Yeah.
Or sorry, Nixon, Wilkerson, and Ty Montgomery for that last spot. Ty Montgomery, Christian Wilkerson, Christian Wilkerson can cover kicks. They're both very good at that.
Yeah.
So Trey Nixon either has to pull far enough ahead of them as a wide receiver, which might be tough to do on Montgomery given his versatility, or he's got to close the gap as a kick coverage guy. And it could go either way. But that's kind of what it comes down to for him making the team again, if they're going to keep six receivers, which in and of itself is a question.
He does have that speed and wiggle. It's going to take some time for him to develop as a punt returner, but I wouldn't completely rule that out as something that he could do productively, right? I think he's got some of those traits to him. He just hasn't done it enough. And I don't know if they're going to trust him back there given the lack of experience with it, but they've done crazier things, right? They put different guys back there in different points, and Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry returning punts for them last year at some point in time with Gunner when he got that concussion. So I wouldn't rule completely out with Trey Nixon. Last thing here with the offense before we talk about some of the defensive takeaways as well. Jonnu Smith, I thought he had a nice week. And we talked about this on Tuesday. Last year, he had the baby. He wasn't able to come to OTAs because of COVID concerns and wasn't really a part of the offseason program. This year, he's participated every single day. He's been heavily involved. Hunter Henry has been limited in some of these practices. So we've seen a lot of Jonnu Smith. We mentioned earlier in the show, he made the catch over Kyle Duggar. On Tuesday, he made a similar catch over Adrian Phillips. So he had two really nice catches on kind of jump balls, high point type plays in these last couple of practices. He, speaking of Mac at the beginning about the confidence level and how you're seeing it sort of come out a little bit more and be a little bit more aggressive. I also feel similarly to Jonnu Smith that he's a little bit more confident out there in the way that he's running. He's playing faster. He's imposing his will a little bit more out there. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to have a 1,000-yard season just because he had some good plays in minicamp, but he definitely looks a lot more confident and sure of himself in this offense than he did this time last year. I thought last year, throughout the summer, it was pretty evident that Jonnu Smith was going through it mentally, right? Like he was kind of thinking too much and not playing freely and not playing fast. Now it doesn't really look like that as much anymore.
No, it doesn't. No, he seems much more comfortable. And I think, was it him or Bourne or Aguilar who talked about, in year 2, it's just so much easier in New England because there's not that learning curve. You can kind of just open it up. I forget which of the three of them said it. One of them said it, and the other two we asked about it. I agreed with it. So they all feel that way. And you can see it. You can really see it, I think, more so with Jonnu Smith than anybody else, that he's just out there having fun. He's just out there playing ball. It's not, for lack of a better term, it's not a whole science experiment to him. That's what it felt like at times last year with him. Like it was
too much thinking.
Everything, right. Everything was so broken down to littlest. No, he's out there. He's loose. He's having fun. That's a big development. And then if they do change the offense, it might get fit his skill set a little better. That'll only help him.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And we saw some of those 12 personnel looks that they were running with Devin Asiasi as the other tight end just because of Henry's limited work in these couple of days. And you can see how some of the movements that they're asking Jonnu Smith to do now and some of these new stretch looks that they're running with the zone stuff, it's intriguing. I don't know if crafting your offense around Jonnu Smith is really necessarily the adjustment or the pivot that we were all looking for this offseason, but it certainly can't help to get him more involved. And he's definitely one of their more explosive players in terms of his athleticism and his ability to carry the football. So any chance to get the ball in his hands more, I think is a good thing, right? And that's, I think, what ultimately the goal of all of this stretch stuff that they're running is to get the football into space more often. I think what they probably went back and self-scouted a little bit about their offense last year is everything was in a phone booth, right? Like everything was so condensed. The formations were heavy. The run plays, it's 4 or 5 yards in a cloud of dust a lot of the time, unless they break a big one. And the passing game as a, kind of branching off of that was very limited to that short and intermediate stuff. And everything felt like it was within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage. These Shanahan style schemes are going to allow them to get the football into space a little bit more and allow them to get open and run with the ball a little bit more. I think that that's some of the goal of this transition that they're making. All right, let's move over to the defensive side of the football. We always caveat defensive takeaways from minicamp with it's pretty difficult to have big overarching takeaways on defense just because there's no pads and there's no tackling and there's no real blocker resistance from the offensive line up front. So it's not really defense yet, right? It is for the corners, though, and for the defensive backs. And I wanted to start with Jack Jones on that side of the ball. It was an up and down week for Jack Jones. I think that's a fair way to put it. But the point is that he's out there. He's out there, and they're rotating him out there a lot with Jalen Mills and Terrence Mitchell and Malcolm Butler and Jonathan Jones and the other starters in that group. So they clearly have seen enough out of Jack Jones to be intrigued about him possibly contributing as a rookie. I wouldn't say that he's been shut down or locked down or anything like that through the spring practices that we have seen, but it's at least compelling that he's contributed, that he's out there, that he's working with the first team defense. And you do see some things that you like about his ability to move, his ball skills, things like that did stand out a little bit.
Yeah, they did. I thought it was really telling yesterday. He actually got hurt early in practice. I don't know what it was.
He was fielding a punt and he tried to dive for the football and he landed on the football. And I think he just knocked the wind out of him. Troy Brown was not too happy with him for trying to field.
Is that what I couldn't tell if he got the wind knocked out of him or he rolled his ankle or whatever. But yeah, he walked off the field with the training staff. You're thinking, oh no, this is a guy that they might be counting on.
Yeah.
But then he comes back in shortly after. He had a really nice interception working against Christian Wilkerson. It was one of those where why am I blanking on the route? Not a slant, but it's where you start the slant and then come back in.
There's a little hitch route.
Like a hitch. It felt like more than a hitch to me. A hitch is like 3 steps slanted in. It was like more, he came from outside the numbers to between the hashes. I guess that's still a hitch. I don't know. I haven't slept. Anyway, Christian Wilkerson was running a hitch and Jack Jones is on him in man. And the throw was a little bit out in front of Wilkerson. Like I think this was Hoyer. I think the idea was that, he's going to be able to kind of catch the ball as he turned and start running after the catch. But it was one of those ones where Wilkerson and Jones both got to the spot at the exact same time, right? They both got the ball at the same time. Jones was trailing him a little bit and just strong hands from the rookie. He got the ball. He threw the contact. He maintained control. I thought it was a great play. I thought it was kind of a high level play. It's a confidence interception. And then later in practice too, he forces the Nelson Aguilar fumble. So to start practice on the ground and walking off and then make those 2 big plays. I know we got beat a couple times, but it's a learning process.
Yeah, eventful day.
To start from getting hurt and then to be able to make those kind of plays, it just, to me, and even to make those plays in the context of getting beat, a few times, it shows he has a short memory. And I think that's massive, as we know. Quarterbacks and cornerbacks, you have to have a short memory to succeed in this league. And that's, something you don't necessarily see on tape. You can kind of guess, but it's something you kind of got to see in person. And we saw it. And so that was my big takeaway with him. I thought he showed he has short memory. He's got that fire. He's got that dog in him, right? That's the meme that's going around now with like the X-ray with the dog in the chest.
Yeah.
Like you'd say that. So yeah, I liked what even though he got beat a couple times, I liked what I saw from yesterday, given he's a rookie and he's just coming into this.
Yeah, he had some battles with Nelson Aguilar. I mean, Aguilar beat him on the go ball. It might have not been in bounds. I would have given it to him as a catch. I think I counted it as a catch. But regardless of that, he did get beat a few times by Aguilar, but Aguilar is an NFL receiver, and he still went back. And as you said later on in practice, he was able to strip the ball from Aguilar and he would have limited it to a small gain anyways. Like that was also like a little hitch or a curl, and it was like a 4 or 5 yard gain regardless. And he still got the football out. He's been competitive, and it doesn't really look too big for him either, right? Like it doesn't look like he's out of place or he doesn't belong on the field with the rest of those guys. And you look at this cornerback depth chart, it's a little scary right now in the cornerback room. I think if the season were to start tomorrow or on Sunday, you're probably looking at Jalen Mills and Terrence Mitchell as your starting corners, unless Malcolm Butler can sort of recreate it a little bit more than what we saw this week. But based off of what we saw this week, it's probably those 2 guys, right? It's probably Mills and Mitchell. That group is dying for Jack Jones to become a player, right? Like they're just dying for that, for him to emerge and become an impact player as quickly, as early as possible. And does seem, at least so far, I would say up for it for the most part. He's got a ways to go, but he's at least not shying away from the opportunity, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think that's a really good omen for the Patriots, because that cornerback group right now, out of all the position groups that they have on the roster, because I'm going to talk about linebacker now, and at linebacker, it's also a little bit thin. Like you also worry about the upside there, but you also have Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips and Jabril Peppers and the safeties to fill in some of these gaps as well. And I think Josh Uche is going to play on and off the line of scrimmage, so he's kind of like a hybrid linebacker that's going to be in that group. So at the end of the day, you're really only looking for 1 or 2 contributors from the true off-ball inside linebacker group. cornerback, they're going to have to put 3 corners out there, right? Like, 3 corners got to play. And it's going to be harder to hide those guys than it would be for the scheme to hide Juwan Bentley, for instance, or Mac Wilson or Raekwon McMillan. That trio at linebacker, though, and talking about off-ball linebackers, Wilson, McMillan, and Bentley, that seemed to be the leaders in the clubhouse right now, to be the contributors or be the guys that are going to be out there the most. It's, obviously we know Bentley's gonna play a lot and he's gonna have that mic role, but behind him, McMillan and Wilson seem to kind of be almost splitting like that second linebacker spot. Cameron McGrone still working with the scout team defense. I guess that's not a major surprise after he basically barely practiced last year. I mean, he's still got a long way to go. But what's your impression of this linebacker group? It's another group that, whether it's Uche or it's Perkins or it's Anthony, like someone's got to emerge out of that group as well.
I'll say what I've said the last couple of shows. I still think it's going to be a rotation. I think between Mac Wilson and Ronnie Perkins and Cameron McGrone and Josh Uche, I think they're all very versatile, but I think they all have different strengths, and I think you can really match them to the situation. So I look at it as a situation where they're going to kind of try to, it could be a game plan thing. They're going to try to put, the best guy on the field for the best, based on the matchup. So I outside of Bentley on early downs, is there really a guy that skill set stands out so much where you say this guy needs to be a 60, 65, 70% usage rate guy? No. So play it off the matchups. They've done it at other positions before. They've done it at corner, not recently, but they've done it at corner. They've done it at wide receiver. Why not try it at linebacker? I think linebacker is a position where that sort of strategy would really have some benefits.
I think that's kind of how they're looking at both these positions, linebacker and corner, is that it's going to be somewhat situational, and they're going to roll with the hot hand, I'm sure, in some occasions. But if one game plan, you come in and you're going to be pretty zone heavy, then a guy like Terrence Mitchell probably has an upper hand on Malcolm Butler and Jack Jones and those types of schemes. So they'll probably throw Mitchell out there. But if they feel like the best game plan against the opponent is to play man, then you might see Malcolm Butler, you might see Jack Jones, you might see some of the man guys, right? So I think that that's a possibility pretty much everywhere. And they're going to try to just mask it with depth, right? And sort of just throw a bunch of different skill sets at it. I'm not as concerned about linebacker as corner, just because of what you were kind of saying, which is you're only going to really be playing one or two of these guys at a time, right? So it's not like you're really going to have to play anybody 85% of the snaps anyway. So if Bentley's your first down run stuffing Mike linebacker, and then on second and third down in passing situations, you play more safeties in the box and you're really light in that situation, then that's fine too. If Mac Wilson sort of emerges, that would work as well. But I think that they're really optimistic that at least on the ball, rushing the passer, that Uche or Ronnie Perkins might actually turn it on this season and be consistent throughout the season. They certainly need that. That back seven right now, the safety group looks great, but the cornerback group, the linebacker group, they need somebody, they need some star power there, right? Like they need somebody to come out of the woodwork and emerge as an impact player.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right. I think that that about does it with our recap. I saw a lot of people in the chat talking about rookies and some impressions of the rookies. So, Alex, before we switch over to the Boston Sports Minute, which we absolutely need to do today, we can do rapid fire. And I really mean rapid fire. Through some of these rookies that we didn't necessarily hit on in length. First, starting at the top of the first round pick, Cole Strange. No pads. It's not really evaluating offensive line time of year, but what were your initial impressions of Cole Strange?
I don't hate that he's getting in scrums. I don't hate it.
Last year, David, for sure.
Last year, David Andrews talked about, the identity up front was they're going to be bullies, and it translated in the run game. So he's going to be a fit up there. So I got no technical takeaway. We didn't see anything.
Yeah, he does look a little bit like he's tall and thin for a guard, right? Like he kind of built almost more like a tackle. So you coming in at the Senior Bowl, there were some concerns with bull rush and power and stuff like that in the pass blocking. I do think that he's got to hit the weight room a little bit, but I'm not overly concerned that, that's a rookie, right? And all these guys need to hit the weight room and into the NFL program. Tyquan Thornton, worked mostly with the scout team offense, did play some gunner, also did run right past Miles Bryant and showed off some of that speed. What was that yesterday? What were your initial impressions of Thornton, who still seems like he's kind of, bouncing around between the scout team and running some reps with Mac Jones?
It's very limited. He had that one nice deep ball you talked about. We got to see him going full speed to get the full picture. We just didn't really see that.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be able to be a decoy. Whether or not he's going to be able to be a big volume guy as a rookie or in the initial couple seasons of his NFL career, I think I still have my concerns about that and my skeptics about that. But if you just want him to take two guys with him up the field and clear out the coverage, I think that he'll be able to do that. We talked about the running backs, Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris. Kevin Harris is like the biggest dude I've ever seen for a running back besides Derrick Henry. Like, that guy is just like an absolute tank. His lower body is just insane. He also caught some passes in these last couple of days, showing off some hands, maybe some route running. I think he's a little bit better in that phase than I was expecting, his ability to catch the football.
Yeah, that stood out to me. They seem to get him involved in the passing game. And, we've talked about if James White's not healthy, and he was limited for all the spring. If James White's not healthy, their lack of a pass catching back, maybe they're just going to throw the ball to the traditional early down backs. They got Damian Harris involved in the passing game. They got Ramondre involved in the passing game. So maybe this is another philosophical change in philosophy for the offense.
Yeah, Pierre Strong, I think, too, a good explosive gear. I love that they had him returning kickoffs. I would love to see that. I know they also had Ty Montgomery back there. Ty Montgomery is literally just Brandon Bolden. Like, that's literally what that's exactly the roles he's filling. That's basically what he's doing.
Right.
Playing a little bit more receiver, obviously, than Brandon Bolden did playing running back, but returning kickoffs, filling in and when there's holes in the skill position groups. But I would love to see Pierre Strong in that 4.37 speed get a chance to return some kickoffs. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that could succeed in that role, certainly.
Yeah, so Marcus Jones was in the red non-contact jersey, so basically didn't see anything out of him. So he can't really have a takeaway. He had those off-season shoulder surgery on both shoulders. So we'll see if he's even for camp. Those are some significant injuries that he's bouncing back from. Andrew Stuber and Jason Hines, I'm not sure what's going on with those two, but something's going. Maybe they, I don't want to speculate. So something's going on with those two that they weren't out there. So we didn't see them. Sam Roberts, defensive lineman. It's your guess is as good as mine as how good they did.
I will say this. He seemed to take coaching really well. There weren't many times, I didn't watch him a ton, but the few times I was kind of focused on him, coaches would tell him something, he'd fix it. There weren't a lot of times that he struggled with the instruction, and that's not everything, but that's encouraging. He also missed one guy.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Come on, Evan.
How did I forget? I skipped right over Alex's favorite new quarterback, Bailey Zappi.
Future to be traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for a second-round pick, Bailey Zappi. He looked good.
Zappi's got some zip. Is that too easy? Is that like low-hanging fruit? Like, is that too easy of a joke?
It's dumb. He's just good. He's a good quarterback. That's it.
Yeah, I like some of the zip on the football. I think is definitely there enough. He's got an NFL arm, maybe more so than what people were a little bit concerned about. I still don't love his delivery. It's a little bit wonky, but I won't get too nitpicky about that. But he throws the ball on time, and he's got enough to get it there, right? Like those are the two prerequisites to be on an NFL depth chart as a quarterback, and I think he checks both of those boxes. A really good backup, at the very least, for the time being. And it was notable, I thought, that he was getting reps, right? Like, it wasn't like he was just standing there the entire practice.
Right.
He was getting some reps during team, and they were rotating him in there a little bit. It was like Mac, Hoyer, Mac, Zappi, I think is how it went. Like, Mac got 2 goes at it, and Hoyer and Zappi each got 1. So whatever order that was in, I'm not 100% sure. Like, that was sort of the way that they split it up.
We saw Danny Etling. Who was it last year? The dude from Central Connecticut. Why can't I think of his name?
I'm blanking on it too.
And anyway, we've seen some of these like 7th round pick. Brian Lewerke's another one, Michigan State.
Yeah.
We've seen these guys come in and essentially just be a camp arm, right? They're just there to be essentially, so a coach doesn't have to run a drill or whatever. Zappy was involved. He was a lot more than that.
Yeah. He was definitely had a role out there and was getting opportunities, I think is the better way of putting it.
Jake Dogala, damn it. Jake
Dogala. Of course. Yeah, those guys.
I didn't get that.
Those guys were legitimate camp arms, right? Like this is looked a lot more like what Jared Stidham would get, right, or something like that in the spring. Right. So certainly some run there for Zappy, and he looked the part. I'll give it to you, Alex. He looked the part.
Start listening to me when I drop these names on you, and we need to mark the date. I think it was it 3 days ago? No, 3 days ago. I did a mock draft for 2023, and I texted it to you. So mark it down, June 6th, 2022, as the day I started badgering Evan about the 2023 draft class.
Yeah, 2023? Yeah.
2023 draft class. June 6th, 2022, I started talking about the 2023 draft class.
All right, so that does it for the Patriots portion of the podcast, but we are going to wrap it up with the Boston Sports Minute and discuss the Boston Celtics. Alex was at the game, covering the game for the Sports Hub last night, and didn't sleep and was very happy when he got the email this morning at 7:30 a.m. that he didn't have to go to Gillette. But Alex, you were there. The atmosphere seemed great. I love how soft the Warriors are. It's too soon though, and especially with the way this Celtics team, especially the last 2 rounds against Milwaukee and Miami, they've made it as difficult as possible on themselves, right? They've never taken the easy path. So to sit here today, I think part of me wants to be like Celtics in 5, right? Like they got the momentum. They got another home game to go up 3-1. They have the Warriors thinking about the fans and the people around Boston flipping off staffers and stuff like that. Like that seems to be in their heads maybe a little bit. But I know this Celtics team is going to still have this series go 6 or 7 or find a way to make this series go 6 or 7. But I'm sure you got to feel a little bit better than you did yesterday about the Celtics, Alex.
I mean, I feel great. That was old school Boston sports dominance. Yeah. They didn't just lose. They're not just afraid of the team. They're afraid of us.
Yeah.
They're afraid of the fans. That was glorious. Yeah. Klay Thompson. The list of people offended by swearing at sporting events that I know now is 2 people. Klay Thompson and my mom. Like, I learned every swear in the book by the time I was 10 by sitting at Fenway and TD Garden. I didn't go to Pats games when I was in high school, but I'm sure I would have picked some up at Gillette, certainly. What are we doing? That's just how it is around here. I'd like to think we're better off for it, frankly. I hope, you know what? Don't even, and I'm not going to say it, not because I think it's wrong. I'm just not going to say it because I like making money off doing these shows. I don't want to get our channel demonetized. That is the only reason I'm not. If I could, I would. Don't F Draymond Green. Don't F Klay Thompson. I just want, I just say the word. Just chant the word itself over and over and over again. You know, I made the joke earlier. What did the Warriors staffers think that we were going to wish them luck? So do that. Go into the Garden, game 4, luck, but not luck, right? You get what I'm saying? No, as for the Celtics, I think they exercised some demons in that game. I really do. I think, first of all, the ability to get to the basket, and I know they had trouble finishing at the basket at times, but it felt like when they drove to the basket, it wasn't just, putting their head down trying to get the foul. I feel like there was an actual plan. You saw it it wasn't the first possession, but it was early on where Jaylen Brown gets Draymond one-on-one on an ISO off a screen, and he goes to the basket, and he hit him with like an up and under Euro. That play, that situation in game 3, in game 2, I think he just puts his head down, tries to draw the foul, and probably turns it over. So to see that development to me was big. And then maybe I'm in the minority on this belief. I know the third quarter wasn't great. Like they got outscored. That felt like a win. It felt like a win. It was 33-25. There was that one freak 7-point possession, which was kind of a dumb foul by Al Horford. I don't think it was a flagrant, but you take that out, it was pretty much even. If you can start the game the way they've started games, and they've been great at starting games in these playoffs, you don't need to win the third quarter. You just need to survive it, especially when
Right.
they've been as good in the fourth as they have been. I felt like they survived the third quarter last night. That was certainly encouraging. And even though the turnover number was a little high, I gave that stat out on the last show about, the over under 12 turnovers. They were able to play good in the minutes they needed to. So that was there was a lot encouraging about last night.
Yeah, when it comes to the taunting and the fans and all that stuff, my message to everybody going to the game tomorrow night is keep it up, right? Like this is clearly affecting them. They're talking about it left and right. And I get that a lot of the time the media asks them and they're just answering questions, but it's clearly a topic on their mind. And Steve Kerr came out right after the game and called us classless, and Clay Thompson kind of said the same thing. And then there was that report today that staffers walking around Boston are getting the bird and everything. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. We were driving through the city the other day and I saw a Warriors jersey and I almost gave the guy a bird, right? Like, I mean, like this is Boston. Like this isn't Toronto. Like we're not a hockey town, right? Not that we were.
Although we would do the same thing if it was the Bruins.
That's what I'm saying. Like this is a legitimate sports town. This is not, you're not in Silicon Valley anymore, Golden State. Like you're not with all the uppy rich guys in tech out there in San Francisco. Like
they moved from Oakland to San Francisco and it shows.
Yeah, this is a real sports town and you are the enemy, and Draymond Green in particular, because as I've been saying basically the entire series, Draymond Green is not good at basketball anymore. The only thing that he's good at is playing defense and gooning it up, right? Like those are the two things that he can do. The guy's shot he's got to be like 2 for 30 in this series or something like that, shooting the basketball. I think he had 13 points before game 2. I don't know what he had exactly last night, but he's not scoring. He's not doing anything else besides causing a ruckus and playing some solid defense. That's it.
Let's give credit where credit's due here. Draymond's not a scorer. Like they're not counting on him. If he needs to score 20 points,
I'm just saying
something's gone wrong.
He's not the player he used to be, right? Like Draymond 3 or 4 years ago was a different guy.
He can be a factor, and we've seen it. We saw it earlier in this series. He can be a factor as a passer. He can be a factor as a rebounder. They didn't let it get to that last night.
Yeah.
They were great on the glass. Robert Williams was excellent. All the credit to him. That couldn't have been easy.
Tremendous.
And I think they've done a better job now, 3 games in, of understanding what the Warriors want to do schematically, offensively, and kind of limiting some of these passing lanes and force them into choke points. So as much as I want to take that victory lap and say Draymond's in his own head in the podcast and blah, 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 and maybe that's some of it.
I don't think
I actually think the Celtics have kind of started to crack the code here a little bit.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not, I know we all want to say Draymond sucks and Draymond can't play and all of that, but I think we also need to look at it as Celtics are playing really well. They're not allowing him to do the things he does best.
Yeah.
That's what happened last night. I don't think he went out there and tripped over it. Maybe at times he did, but I think for the most part, it wasn't him tripping over himself. It was the Celtics containing him. So let's give the credit where it's due.
Yeah. The other thing I would say too, about kind of along the lines of cracking the code a little bit, the Celtics are longer than Golden State and they're more athletic than Golden State. And I think Ime Udoka, his message when he huddles them up and he has a message for them or in between games, clearly the adjustments in the message is getting through to these players, because I think it was during one of the, it was at Lisa Salters or whoever works the sideline in the finals, said that Ime Udoka went up to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and said, just finish over these guys, right? Like you got Steph Curry, you got Klay Thompson on you. Like when they played against Miami, Bam Adebayo was in the way, right? When they played against Milwaukee, Brook Lopez and Giannis were in the way. This Golden State team doesn't have the rim protection that those teams used to have, right? They don't have the resistance in the paint. And Jason Tatum was driving in the first couple games to get fouls. He's trying to draw fouls, and they're a little bit too loose with the basketball. Last night, they were strong with the ball. They went over the top of these guys, and they finished. And then were they perfect at the rim? No, but they got enough of it going that it made the difference, right?
Right.
So Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, you don't have Bam Adebayo staring at you when you go down the lane. You don't have Brook Lopez staring at you when you're going down the lane. You can finish on Draymond Green. You can finish when they switch on, get Tatum on Steph and get that matchup. He can finish over Steph Curry. So I think the Celtics are the more athletic team. I think they're the longer team, and they played like that last night. You mentioned the rebounding. When they have that two big lineup out there with Rob and Al Horford, they got a lot more size up front than Golden State has. So they should dominate the glass. Like, they should control the rebound and should control that aspect of the game. So I hope that they've cracked the code too. Like I said at the beginning of this, I'm used to the Celtics now pushing these series to 6 or 7 games just because they can't take the easy way. I know they swept Brooklyn, but even that series, like, every game was close, right? It was like kind of like a gentleman's sweep. But we'll see what ends up happening tomorrow night. I have a good feeling about tomorrow night, but I think the Warriors come back in game 5 and don't let it end like that, right? Like, I think that the Celtics are going to have to win a pressure game 6 to knock them out, right? I don't think the Warriors are just going to roll over and give it to them in 5 games, but I also don't want to get too ahead of ourselves and crown them champs just yet either. So we'll see what ends up happening.
What's game 5 going to be like back in San Francisco? What are the fans going to do? Are they going to boo Celtics players in the streets? And like, how are they going to respond? And will Marcus Smart be able to take it? Oh no, I can't even imagine. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's so,
I'm
what
sorry.
did you think was going to happen? It's like, the finals. We still take sports seriously in this city. I know the NBA is a league where it's people root for players, not teams, and all of that.
Yeah.
We weren't going to shake hands and say, well, I hope we just get a competitive series. I hope we get an entertaining series. Hey, if we win, you can come to our parade. If you win, we'll go to yours. I know a lot of the country views sports that way now. Not here. Never here. We want, this is about us. This is about us.
Look, I'm not going to flip the bird. I'm not going to curse at anybody, but I give people looks when I see, Yankees hats around town or whatever. There's a guy in my building, a very nice guy, but he's a Bills fan, and he likes to wear a Buffalo Bills hat around the apartment building. Whenever I see him, I say, hey, screw your hat, right? Like take the hat off. Like, that's just how we're made, right? Like, that's in our DNA. That's our blood. And look, I don't love the FU stuff. Like, maybe we can come up with something a little bit more creative.
No. Now it's set.
Now it's got to stick.
I was talking to somebody about this earlier. Just to leave it at this, right? In terms of those chants and all of that, this isn't the first time we've had this playoffs. Really is the year of the bird, because remember, it started with Kyrie behind the head and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Say what you will about Kyrie Irving, he really embraced that role of the villain.
Oh yeah,
and when he egged it on. It felt like legitimately wanted more. He wanted all of the hate. He wanted to be in that spot. When it comes to Golden State, I don't think they know what they're up against. I think they're in over their heads. I think when they go out there and the staffer tells the reporter, I got flipped off 17 times. When Klay Thompson goes to the reporter and says, when Klay Thompson goes to the presser and says, I don't think this is appropriate in front of children, I think they think that it's going to stop. They think we're the Golden State Warriors. The country loves us. The media loves us. We are the kings. If we say it, it goes. If we say no more swearing, there will be no more swearing. Like, that's not how this works.
No.
You're only going to make it worse. I don't think they totally understand. And look, can they still come out and shoot the lights out and win? Absolutely. But it's in their heads. And I don't think they understand the can of worms they have opened in the last really 24 hours.
Yeah, by talking about it, it just makes it a lot worse. Yeah. And
we wear this like a badge of honor.
As we should. When
you complain that you get flipped off 17 times one morning, we look at that and say, we only got him 17 times? Yeah. Like, that's just careful what you're asking for.
Here's the thing. Our job as fans is to help the home team win, right? Like, in any way that we can, whether it's being really loud, whether it's giving them energy by cheering them on, or whether it's getting in the opposing team's head, right? Like, that's our job. When you are at a hockey game and it's the playoffs, like, you chant the goalie's name, right? And you try to get in his head. When you're, you have a villain like Draymond Green, it's F you Draymond Green. Like, that's part of our role in this series. And if the fans can sway it to 3-1 Celtics or even just help a little bit, right? Like, that's all it takes, like, we'll definitely take that. And yeah, I remember as a kid going to games with my dad, and like the FU chants would start, and I'd like look at him, he'd look at me, and he'd be like, "You're like 11, like no, like no cursing."
For me, it was the opposite. My mom didn't like it. My dad was cool. That was like the one place I was allowed to swear. It was like, Yankees suck. I remember that was like my first
Yankees
ever exposure to it.
That's not a swear.
But even some of them, it was like, not when we leave. You can do it here, not when we leave. You know, it's just part. It's part of the experience. It's part of growing up here. It was fun.
All right, so quickly, the Bruins telling Bruce Cassidy that he was going to be the coach next year and then firing him 3 weeks later is
at his house.
Continues the clown show that is going on the other side of the TD Garden, right? The Bruins side of the TD Garden. As one team is 2 wins away from being NBA champions, the other team is an absolute disaster. I can understand needing some time to process the season and maybe coming to the conclusion weeks afterwards that you're going to go in a different direction. But if you're even 50-50 on it or 75-20, like why tell him he's back, right? Like why you can't tell somebody that they're coming back next year and then reverse course 3 weeks later, right? Just don't tell him anything. Just say, I need some time to digest and we'll see what happens, right? That would have been the right way to handle it. Instead, they tell Bruce that you're coming back, you're going to coach out your contract at least, and then they fire him 3 weeks later. And he is rightfully so, seems extremely pissed off about the situation. Now he's saying that he might try to take Patrice Bergeron with him to his next team. This has a disaster. I mean, this was already a disaster, but it continues to be a disaster.
I still can't believe they did it at his house. And I don't like, I always assume that stuff happened at the facility. I don't know entirely. I know in the NFL it usually does.
Do you remember Tito Francona? Like the cameras on him leaving Fenway Park after they fired him?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, hey, I'm coming over. So then you got to offer him coffee, maybe some crackers, or you do one of those cheese platters or whatever, some gabagool, right?
Charcuterie board. Yeah.
Charcuterie board. That's what I'm thinking of. You know, you're sitting, and then maybe his wife's home, maybe his kids are home.
Yeah.
By the way, we're taking your dream job from you after we said you'd have it for at least another year. Like maybe that's just the business. I don't know. Like, I don't mean that necessarily to criticize Sweeney. I think there's plenty to criticize him for. That whole chain of events is so mind-blowing to me. Somebody compared it to Brady going over to Kraft's house to tell him he was leaving the Patriots, but Brady was the one leaving, right?
And that was almost more respectful. Just it's the off season. Like people are in different sides of the world sometimes. Like that was a respect thing. This is just terrible.
He went to it. He didn't even invite him over his own house.
Yeah,
hey, come over. We got to talk. No, it was I'm coming over. Break out. You got to get a bottle of wine out now. Get the fireplace going. All that. Oh, and by the way, I got some bad news. Just mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely terrible. Last night they showed some Bruins players at the Garden for the Celtics game. You got Charlie McAvoy in a sling, right? Matt Grisblick is with him in some sort of cast or sling or whatever. Brad Marchand's not going to be back until December or January. He's got double hip surgery he's recovering from. Patrice Bergeron's a free agent, might play, might not play, might go with Bruce. Like, this is just, they might trade David Pastrnak. Like, the list just keeps going on and on and on. And this is not going to end well for the Bruins. Like, I just don't know how this turns around. And this is not going to be like an Ime Udoka situation, right? Where you hire the right manager and it turns the whole thing around. Lastly, Red Sox out west still, but 7 in a row for your Red Sox, Alex. Are you excited? Are you on the bandwagon? Is it the A's and the Angels? The Angels have won a franchise or lost a franchise record.
Last night they tried making all their walk-up music Nickelback to snap that, and I think they didn't score a run. I think they got like 2 hit. Don't say it. The offense is still quiet. They've won 2 of their last 3, 2 of the last 4, whatever it is, 1-0. The offense has to get going. I'm not all the way. This is more what I think this team is. They're going to go on some stretches. They're not like the 10 games under 500 team they were to start the year.
Yeah.
They do have the best record in baseball since like May 10th. I think I saw whatever date it was. Court shaved his beard.
I love that about baseball, right? Let's just pull out an obscure date and like.
It's not obscure. He shaved his beard. It's
that's so baseball. It hurts.
It's been enjoyable. I'm not ready to say I'm in on them yet. I still think they've got a ways to go. I'm a little more open-minded now to them buying at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Really buying ahead of the trade deadline. I don't know if they can afford to wait until July 31st to make a move.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's at least been exciting. I'm in the minority. I love the West Coast road trips. I love staying up till like 2 a.m. and you're on Twitter with like 5 or 6 other people watching the game. And it's
You're
like
in
just you.
minority.
It's this
It's
real
you.
cozy.
It's you and Steve Peralt, right? Like it's you
And Pete
and
Blackburn's normally
yeah.
in there. It's this real cozy feeling. I like it. But yeah, no, it's been fun baseball recently. They're about to be the only show in town, so we'll see if they can keep it going here in like 2 weeks.
That's what I was about to say. The clock's ticking, right? The Patriots just broke for summer break. The Celtics, the finals, one way or another, is ending soon. So it's a Red Sox show here in a second, and we'll see if they're up for it once that happens. But Alex and I, speaking of shows, will be back on Tuesday. Normal schedule next week, Tuesday, Thursday. We'll do the Q&A show on Thursday. Maybe we'll do some roster breakdown on Tuesday. So some more minicamp takes and rosters and 53-mans and all that kind of stuff coming your way. And we'll keep carrying it throughout the offseason, and we'll make sure to stay active even as the Patriots go on summer break here. But I wish we got to see practice today. Like, I'm glad that the 9 a.m. practice got canceled.
Well,
but
hold on, let me jump in here real quick. We had talked about doing this, I think, last year, and we never did it because this is the time of year it gets tough to fill shows.
yeah,
If we were to bring back like clips of old Patriots games, like I don't know if we can get all 22, but like even just highlight clips of plays or players. I think we had this idea when we were talking about David Patton's cycle, right? To like break down David Patton's cycle. Is that something people would be interested in? Let us know in the comments, but that might be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. We got to fill some time, and we can't only talk about roster battles and position breakdowns so often, right? We do that all the time anyway. So yeah, come in and let us know if that would be something you'd be interested in. At least we can dig it up on YouTube on the TV copy. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get any all 22 of old Patriots games, but we can certainly find the TV copy of whatever. And I think that would be a lot of fun. Do some reminiscing and maybe look at some other things. I don't know if people want to see, not almost like more interesting to make it like not Brady, right? Like we've all seen the Brady highlights time and time again. It might be cool to break down some of the other things that have happened over the years as well.
Or maybe just like games at moments. It doesn't have to be players. It could be like, I wanted to say like a big fourth down maybe, but obviously the first one that comes to mind on a big fourth down is the good one.
Yeah.
But things like that. Maybe the fourth down stop in the Baltimore game in 14 in the playoffs. Like that's a big play that I feel like gets overlooked at times. Let us know what you want to see in the chat. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea. So Alex and I will be back throughout the off season. So keep it right here on Patriots Beat and on Patriots Press Pass. And we'll also discuss the other Boston sports teams with the Boston Sports Minute throughout the off season as well. So we'll fill some time with that too. And we'll stick with the Celtics until the finals are over. And that will be exciting for everybody here in Boston. But until next time, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go Celtics, F you Draymond, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.